Alpha 322 is right around the corner and available for testing now on the public test universe. But arriving with it are 3 newly flyable and drivable vehicles from manufacturers as varied as Apoa, Origin, and Drake. Let's find out more.
So in Alpha 322, we have 3 new vehicles available, and they cover a huge range of both size and role, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about them. Let's start with the most exotic, the Apoa Santok Yyyy. The Santok Yyyy is a medium fighter from Apoa, but it doesn't follow the traditional medium fighter role that we see with human manufacturers. It has, for its size, quite a lot of health and classic Xi'an high maneuverability, as well as being extremely flashy in both its function and form.
The idea with the alien ships is that we don't want them just to feel alien, we want them to feel different within their own rights, within that kind of alien spectrum. On the Gattax side of things, we've really kind of tried to make them feel quite industrial, quite strong and chunky, whereas on the Apoa side of things, we took more inspiration from the insect form, so we want them to feel a lot faster, a little bit more kind of aggressive and have a bit more attack in their shapes.
When you first see the Santok Yyyy, you'll clearly see the family lineage between itself and the Katual, which is the light fighter from Apoa.
It's their kind of second Xi'an ship that they've made, and it's really bringing kind of a big brother.
They both have 2 stages, or 2 transform states, from landed to the flight pose, and you see that very classic Apoa flowering transformation from a more horizontal position to the more vertical flight and combat position.
It's still got the kind of nice big transforming kind of style when it transforms from landed mode into flight mode. But we've really tried to kind of push the alien aesthetics a little bit further this time, both interior and exterior. One of the kind of more unique elements, I think, on the Santok Yyyy is its cockpit. Not just the space inside, but actually how you enter it. It's got this really kind of exotic, shall I say, seat that comes down to collect you from the player space, and then that kind of all floats down and takes you back into your actual pilot position. One of the things that we really spent quite a bit of time investigating and kind of really trying to kind of nail the visuals on was the actual interactions with the cockpit. We wanted to make sure we weren't stepping on the toes of what we did in the Gattax cockpit, and it needed to be like its own unique thing. Elwin and the Austin team kind of really nailed that visually. It's got these really nice sort of slate buttons with all the Xi'an text in it. And one of the things we were really keen to do with kind of all of our alien ships is remove a lot of that human element. They may be made to be human compatible, but we really wanted them to feel like their native race was the people that built it, and that's who it was made for, us, number 1. And so we've got these kind of really nice interactive tablets with all the Xi'an text on them. We do have a number of paints coming out with the Santok Yyyy. They are still currently just being developed and signed off as we're filming this now. Again, we tried to kind of do something not necessarily kind of completely new, but kind of just push the bar slightly with what we're trying to do. It's that kind of fine thing where alien doesn't always mean fancy and unique, but we do want it to feel a little bit different to what our kind of human races are. It's very obvious when you see the silhouette of the ship and when you see it in flight what it is, but the paints is kind of that little icing on top. And also it kind of gives that really nice read when you get up and close and personal with it.
The Santok Yyyy is a fighter through and through. It really excels at that. It doesn't have any secret hidden features, but it does have all of our latest tech and features within it, such as weapon racks, personal storage, and accessible components. So this ship is really for those who prize maneuverability and position in combat. The firepower of the ship is pretty good for its size, but its real strength is its maneuverability. So that's the Santok Yyyy, available in 322, and we think it's going to be a great addition to our lineup of fighters and alien ships. Just like the other ones, it's great for those players who want that role, but just want something a bit more stylish and exotic. From there, let's go from space combat and atmospheric combat down to the surface and talk about the Origin X1 series.
The X1 is Origin's first hoverbiking game. It's their kind of answer to some of the other hoverbikes we've already got from different manufacturers, like the Nox, the Dragonfly. This bike was kind of developed alongside the 400i in its concept phase, and the idea was that this is that kind of classic, smaller kind of day vehicle that you can take out from your big, exciting explorer ship. Those two kind of go hand in hand. It has its own little garage at the front of the 400i, and it really just allows you to, once you've landed on planet, you can then kind of leave everything back in your ship and go out and explore and kind of chase down the thrills of the planet on a nice little hover bike.
I'm sure the more enterprising of you out there will be finding all different ways of getting these into places they shouldn't be, such as the upcoming distribution centres.
I think one of the things that's been kind of super nice to see as the bike's kind of gone through its development is really selling the idea of this bike being a hover bike. We've got a lot of VFX and lighting going in from the teams, really selling it that it does feel like a bike in the future. We've got these nice brake lights at the rear, we've got the kind of front lights, and one of my favourite bits on it is actually the cockpit, the kind of like the driver's space. The dashboard in there looks super nice, really sleek, kind of classic Origin, and it all flows really nicely with the rest of the shapes.
The X1 series is a series of 3 bikes that allow Origin to have their own edge of the market in terms of hover bikes and to have 3 different play styles within them. With the X1 Force, this is designed to aid in ground combat, allowing you to be on a speedy, small profile target with some shielding to allow you to absorb a few hits and help engage combat. And then we have the Velocity, which removes the weapon hardpoint and instead gains speed. Whilst tuning is underway at the time of recording, we intend the X1 Velocity to be a competitor to the Nox, and both of those are designed to be faster than the Dragonfly, which is more utilitarian. So the Velocity is a great addition to the ground racing community and will be right at home in all the ground racing tracks. The base X1 is there to provide an option for those of you who don't like the Nox or just don't like whatever aesthetic you think Drake users have. And speaking of Drake aesthetics, that moves us nicely on to the last ship of 322, the Drake Cutter Rambler.
The Cutter Rambler is our 3rd variant of the Cutter series, and it kind of rounds off the series as a whole.
As we talked about at CitizenCon, the Drake Cutter family was always designed as a family of 3, and we've shown you the base one and the Scout. The Rambler is the 3rd one, and it is designed from the start to be the more fleshed out premium starter explorer combination of the 3. I know Premium and Drake might be a bit of a weird juxtaposition there.
They are a very functional manufacturer and no frills manufacturer. That really kind of is sold nicely on the interior space. We've sacrificed some of the rear cargo space for the larger habitation.
This allows extra space for both a suit locker, a food machine, and somewhere to eat that food and a nice little table to chill at.
But even within that habitation, you can see how they've moved the bulkhead back one, they've moved the bathroom, they've opened up this nice space, and then they put, a seat, a desk, a little jump seat, and the bare minimum you need as a pilot going out and exploring our universe. We want to make sure there was visually some differences on the exterior. So we've got the kind of visual-only differences, such as the kind of like the modify rear section. We've also got the kind of more functional stuff. So on top, it's got the extended fuel tank. Visually, we kind of lent into the idea of having your Winnebago or your camper van or whatever it might be, and it's got this kind of like roof rack aesthetic, but it's actually kind of stores all the extra kind of fuel for the extended fuel tanks. And then as with the Scout, we've got the change in the thrusters, and again, we've got a unique set of thrusters on a new nacelles on each side that really help kind of just break up that silhouette a little bit more variation. With the Rambler being kind of a longer range or an extended range vehicle, I think having the kind of like the slightly smaller, they look a little bit more efficient on the engines rather than these great big kind of individual engines. You've got these slightly smaller, more of them, individual thrusters. I'm very happy with the Rambler. One of the things that we kind of really tried to lean into when we were developing the Rambler was Drake's kind of mentality towards building their ships. I think it kind of ticked that box of exactly what Drake would do. They've got this chassis, they want to make somewhere you can spend a bit more time in, somewhere that's a little bit more comfortable, but they're still kind of working to that Drake budget and design ethos. So I'm very happy with how it turned out.
The Rambler really takes the base Cutter to the next level in terms of living on board. I think we all saw that when the Cutter came out, but it was very much more of a camper van than an RV, which is what the Rambler is. So that's a wrap-up of all the new vehicles coming to the Persistent Universe in 3.22. And as always, we look forward to seeing you all use them and abuse them in all different ways in the live game.
Now, of course, Alpha 3.22 comes with more than just vehicles. There's structural salvage, openable cargo containers, new derelict settlements, new hairs for players, new maps for Arena Commander, and more. But since this is our last episode of the year, we have a tradition here at ISC of looking back at everything that's happened the last 12 months and reliving some of our favorite moments. And, well, look, 2023 was good. Great even if you gloss over that little rough patch in the middle there. But heading into the new year, all that I can really think about is everything that's on the horizon that's about to make 2024 the biggest and baddest year of our project yet. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to indulge myself, maybe switch out my CIG cap and put my backer hat on and tell you what has me excited about this next year for the Persistent Universe in a segment that I'm calling Disco Lando's Star Citizen 2020 Forecast. Now, without talking specific dates, let's discuss what's being targeted and currently on track for release in just the first half of 2024, starting with Master Modes, the new way to pilot and operate ships we've been discussing since CitizenCon 2952. Now, whether that's every ship or a staggered rollout of groups of vehicles depends on how work progresses, but it's a major change to the way spaceships operate in the Persistent Universe, and you can be sure that we'll update on it more when the time comes. And of course, when your ships aren't in flight, they can be stored in the newly persistent hangars that are arriving with freight elevators, freight kiosks, and the new cargo transaction system that we've shared on both ISC and this year's CitizenCon. Now, all combined, they form the next major evolution of cargo careers and will also have far-reaching, broader implications for the entire Star Citizen experience. And then outside of vehicles and hangars, there's also a variety of FPS combat improvements coming to the first half of 2024. With improvements to reloading, the weapon wear and misfire system, scopes and dynamic crosshairs and charge and drain, and even more we'll be able to show you once we return in the new year. And then outside of strictly FPS combat, there are new player character features coming, like the updates to the EVA system, the visor and lens system, loot screens, default item interactions in the personal interaction system, and there's even new shopping and mission apps in development now. And while we're talking about apps, the first half of 2024 is also currently scheduled to see the arrival of our new character customizer with things like tattoos, piercings, scars, and yes, Virginia, it's true, beards. As for how many and of what kind, only Andre knows for sure, but you can bet we're gonna ask him sometime around March. And then, of course, if you're in-game, there's also a little thing called Mobiglass and an awfully big thing called Star Map. They're both getting their big updates in the first half of next year. And have I mentioned those enormous distribution centers that'll be the new microcosm homes for every gameplay and mission feature that exists in Star Citizen, as well as the 4, 5, 6, let's just say several new and updated vehicles that are making their way to the Persistent Universe in just the first 6 months of 2024? I did, just now. Now you can check those off. Whew. Okay. So, real talk, CIG hat back on. Now, you're probably looking at your screen and saying to yourself, what about Pyro and 4.0? Well, don't fret. The things that we just covered are those that aren't too dependent on continuing foundational tech work like server meshing. So we feel pretty confident in targeting everything that we just shared for the first 6 months. But when it comes to something as enormous as the complete Pyro system in Alpha 4.0, well, that's where the new preview channel comes into play. Now that said, Alpha 4.0 is currently targeting a summer 2024 release, but that won't mean that you have to wait until then to play it or learn more about it. That's because in 2024, we'll continue doing playtests like the one we just completed, and you'll be able to follow along with its development firsthand on the preview channel. That's the planets, moons, space stations, settlements, and outlaw lifestyle that comes within the Pyro system, but also an entire host of additional new features, content, and quality of life improvements like, fully functional jump points, the new quantum travel system, new vehicle HUD and MFD work, resource management, hacking, and much, much more, all being worked on in tandem. The preview channel will let you and us test 4.0 together while maintaining the stability of the Persistent Universe with all those other great additions we just discussed. And then, in the summer of 2024, two become one, and we can avoid that thing that didn't quite go the way that we'd hoped.
The holiday live stream?
And then, just because we're cheeky, there are still some things better left for you to discover on your own. And don't forget, we haven't even talked about the back half of the year yet. All in all, 2024 is shaping up to be the watershed year for Star Citizen. And if we've learned anything this year, it's that through the trials of 3.18 to the successes of CitizenCon and everything in between, before that and coming up next, Star Citizen is a project that continues to iterate, to evolve, and to embody an experience you simply can't find anywhere else, whether that's in the universe or within our community that makes all this possible. So thank you for helping us reach the heights that we have, and buckle up for the journey still ahead. We're in for one hell of a year. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next year. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to indulge myself, switch out my CIG cap, and put my backer hat on.